innocent man, did not do it, did not commit the crime, never did. He spent years in prison. Put him up full mask. He spent 5 years in prison. So for his trouble, they gave him $350,000. And there's another twist. You're looking at Demetrius Smith, an innocent Maryland man who has now received an apology from the state and approval for a $340,000 plus settlement after he was wrongly convicted of 2 violent crimes and imprisoned for more than 5 years. So Mr. Smith was wrongly convicted of first-degree assault and murder in 2008 when he was 25 years of age. Smith spent more than 5 years in prison, including a full year after his innocence had been completely proven. More than 10 years after his 2013 release, he finally received an apology from the governor, Wes Moore, the state's first Black governor, and the Board of Public Works. Governor Moore apologized directly to Smith on September 20th during a Board of Public Works hearing to determine a compensation settlement, according to CBS News. Here's the quote. We're here today more than 10 years after he was released from incarceration, providing Mr. Smith with long overdue justice that he was deprived of, an apology from the state of Maryland that until today he's never received, said Moore. I am deeply sorry for the fact that our justice system failed you, not once, but our justice system failed you twice. And while no amount of money can make up for what was taken from you, the action this board is taking today represents a formal acknowledgement from the state for the injustice that was caused. I'm going to give you the details of what actually transpired. Now, naturally, $350,000, that's it? For willful, extreme, and in my opinion, criminal conduct against this one man? You got to think about what happens in these scenarios. $350,000, way too low, but the comment is right. There's no amount of money that can really restore what you lose by giving somebody 5 years of your life. Life is precious. Life is sacred. And it was just taken away. What about the people who did this to him? What about the individuals who were aware that he was innocent? What about the system itself? Has it corrected? Will this happen again? There's more. All right. So more than 10 years after the release, he got his apology, and the governor talked about it, waxed poetic. Moore was arrested in Baltimore. This is your history, in 2008, and charged with killing Robert Long, a murder he never committed. And despite the judge at his bail hearing saying the case was, quote, probably the thinnest case he'd ever seen, the prosecution decided to move forward anyway, using testimony from a witness who was not even present at the scene of the crime. While out on bail, he was arrested for assault based on witness testimony that was later recanted. Smith was convicted of murder in 2010. He was sentenced to life in prison plus 18 years. Smith entered an Alford plea in 2011 for the assault charge. That kind of plea allows a defendant to accept a conviction in exchange for a reduced sentence while also asserting they are actually innocent of the crime. But if prosecuted, they may lose. Because he'd already been convicted of a crime he did not commit once. Smith thought the Alford plea was the best case scenario. That year, the Maryland U.S. Attorney's Office charged the person who committed the murder, all right, to get the right guy. And Smith was proven innocent of the crime. However, they didn't release him. And he sat in prison for another 1.5 years until the state dropped the charge in 2012. Smith petitioned the court in May of 2013 to have his Alford plea for the assault charge dismissed after his murder conviction was dropped and a witness in the case recanted. ProPublica reports Baltimore prosecutor Richard Gibson tried to block it. claiming that Judge Barry Williams had no authority to change Smith's sentence. A new prosecutor in 2013 changed the 10-year sentence to time served and 3 years of probation, later reduced to probation. However, Smith found it difficult to find housing and employment with a record and said he had to sit down and explain the whole story to potential employers. In 2018, Judge Williams finally wiped the shooting conviction from the record, saying that it was in the interest of justice and there's too much going on to leave it as is. Smith aptly noted that the conviction should not have been on this record in the first place. I'm innocent, period. Gibson argued against the judge's ruling and argued that the sentence modification wasn't in the best interest of the community. Judge Williams scolded Gibson for claiming that Smith's two cases didn't have any detectives in common, which was a lie. Smith was allowed to address Gibson during the hearing. I sat in prison for 5 years, Smith said, while noting that Gibson couldn't even look me in the face, tell me I'm sorry. Humans make mistakes, he said to Gibson before saying he couldn't understand why the prosecutor didn't do anything about it. This whole situation is a mess. And all he had to do was say sorry from the beginning, but he knew it was wrong. Gibson did not respond to Smith in court or out of court. According to the Baltimore Banner, the board approved $227,000 in compensation with an additional $89,000 for housing assistance and $25,000 to pay his legal fees. Smith said in 2022 that he'd been waiting a long time for an apology. You know, all I ever asked, said Smith, it's not even about the money, because that's not going to bring back the time. I can't get them years back ever. They're gone. And that's right. Now here's the other side of this. The side less discussed, rarely talked about. The prosecution from the beginning was a criminal act against Mr. Smith. The judge went on record to say, this is probably the flimsiest evidence I've ever seen, giving a warning to the prosecution, providing a note for the record that did not stop the out of control DA nor the ADA. And in order to cover their tracks, when it was fully discovered by another law enforcement agency who actually did the murder, they found the person who did the murder. When it was discovered, what do the authorities do with Mr. Smith? Well, they double down. They try to block his ability to obtain remedy. Prosecutors take an oath not to prosecute. The oath literally says to seek justice. But when you go to any prosecutorial office, you know who gets promoted? Not the people who get the most justice, the people who get the most convictions. Not the individuals who provide the most community remedies, but the people who get the most years as it relates to conviction and jail time. That's how they create the hierarchy. That's what they honor. So we can change politicians. We can elect different DAs. We can try to recruit more heartfelt and righteous attorneys. But until that culture changes to where extreme behavior is not rewarded in this way, and those who decide to be rogue against a citizen, well, you should be hearing from the law yourself.